Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Now, my favorite question to start off with is what is your sober date?
My sober date is 8/15/2024.
8/15. So you're coming up on, 3 months, 4 months.
I'm at 93 days.
That's
How about
incredible,
you?
man. Congrats on that. That's
Thank you.
not an easy feat. I got 4 months away from gambling. My gambling
Okay.
is July 13th. So, and my benzos and weed is April 1st of this year.
Gotcha.
So
Wow.
I got long term recovery when it comes to opiates. I've been clean from opiates for 6.5 years. That was my drug of choice, and been clean from alcohol since February 29th of 2020, Leap Day. So I'm coming up on 5 years without a drink in a few months.
Wow.
So, I
That's
have some
amazing.
long term. I have some long term recovery, but I'm in recovery from many things. So,
Right.
so what was going on April 14th of this year?
April 14th? You mean
Yeah,
August 14th?
that's what I meant. August 14th.
It's all right. I was in jail. So I had originally, I can take it back to March of this year. Okay. So March of this year, I went to inpatient at the VA. Never been to inpatient before. And I was like, you know what? I got to try something different. So I went through that. It was a great program, man. I was ready to rock the world. However, I didn't have a plan for getting out. So if I can like preach anything for anybody in any type of treatment is have a plan when you get out, because I didn't have a plan when I got out. I just went straight back to my normal life in my house with my roommate, you know, taking care of my kid, everything. So 3 days later, I start drinking again. I'm hiding my drinking, trying to hide the drinking. Fast forward to July 10th. July 10th, excuse me, uh, fireworks were still going off somehow. It was, past the 4th of July. I have PTSD, and the smell of them and the unexpectedness of them set me off. I had a flashback. I When I was coming back to, I wanted to, numb those feelings. So I went to the liquor store. I blacked out about a half gallon of whiskey later. Uh, I guess I purchased an 8 ball of cocaine, did that. And then I was arrested that evening. So I started drinking and everything on July 10th, about 5:30 p.m., and I was in jail by 9:30 p.m. I have pending charges right now, 6 felonies, aggravated burglary, and 5 aggravated assaults with a deadly weapon. I don't remember a thing. It's still all pending. I had my arraignment, and I'll get to that. But so I did some time in jail, 6.5 weeks, and I get out, and I go to the VA, and I stopped at the gas station there. Um, I walked over to the gas station, and I saw booze, and I was just freaking out because while I was in jail, everything was stolen from me. My service dog was stolen, my car, everything I owned. So I was homeless. I had a little bit of money, so I drank. Um, Tried to kill myself that next morning by walking onto the highway in front of a car. And the lady stopped, and she was an older lady, man, and she picked me up and she took me to the VA. And they said, "You're not okay. You need to get some help." So they got me into some transitional housing, which I eventually moved into Oxford. And it's been great since, man. I'll tell you that. My arraignment was 2 weeks ago or so, and the judge called me by first name, which was really weird. I've never heard of that, but he said, "Matthew." I said, "Yes, Your Honor." He's like, "I'm not going to take this to trial if you don't want to, and we can work with the DA to see what we can do for you." Blew my mind.
So you have pending charges.
Yeah, I have pending charges, arraignment. I'm out on pretrial. I got my ankle monitor off. I'm doing what I need to be doing.
Now you did 6.5 weeks. Starting August 15th,
No, they started July 10th, and then I got out August 14th.
and you drank that night.
I drank that night. Yep, drank and used cocaine. And then that's when I attempted to take my life, and the lady took me to the VA.
That's awesome. That she. How old was she?
Man, I'm gonna say probably in her 60s or 70s.
That's like a blessing right there.
Yeah, and the crazy part is after she took me, I left again, and then I called a good friend who was there for me when I got out of jail, and she came out of, she took time out of her day and she took me back to the VA, and I stayed that time. I stayed and I got clean.
Yeah. Is this the most clean time you've had in a while?
No, so before my
Well,
relapses, oh, go
let's
ahead.
let's start let's start from the beginning. Where are you from?
Okay, I'm from Wichita, Kansas.
Okay. And born and raised?
Yeah, born and raised here until I was 17 when I joined the Army.
You were 17 when you joined?
Yeah, both my parents signed a waiver to get me in.
All right. So, did you have any brothers or sisters growing up?
I did not. Nope, just single child.
Your parents stay together?
They did, yeah. It was a pretty abusive relationship. My dad was abusive towards my mom, and he was an alcoholic as well.
Okay, so that's where you get it from?
Yeah, absolutely.
When,
And he was in the Army too, so I was trying to follow his footsteps.
yeah. When did you start drinking?
In the Army. I was smoking weed and stuff as a teenager. But when I joined the Army, that opened the doors to drinking. It was almost like a lifestyle in there.
Because you could be 19 on base and drink, right?
I was drinking at 17.
That's what I mean, 17.
Yeah, 17 on base. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Because they figure if you can go to war, you're allowed to drink,
Right. Absolutely.
which is, I think, a valid rule. You
Yeah,
know.
absolutely.
So, what made you join? Because your dad joined?
I joined because my dad was in.
How old are you now?
I'm 33.
Okay, so did you have to go out anywhere?
Yeah, I deployed to Kuwait and Afghanistan.
How long were you out there for?
Multiple times, total of about 2 years.
Did drinking escalate while you were out there?
Not while I was on deployment, but in between deployments and after deployments, yes. To suppress those memories of things that would happen over there. While I was in, I also experienced what we call military sexual trauma. So sexual trauma that happened while I was in the military. And that was something I was drinking to suppress as well.
Are you allowed to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk about that.
What happened? 'Cause I never heard of that phrase.
Yeah, military sexual trauma just means sexual trauma that happened to you while you were serving in the military. So, whether it's something as simple as sexual harassment or all the way up to rape, which is what happened to me. A higher ranking official raped me in the showers one day. And, being a young soldier, I'm too scared to say anything. And so I just lived with that. This all happened overseas too during a deployment. And so after that deployment, that was my last deployment, man. I went heavy with the drinking, very heavy.
Yeah, I can. I mean, I can't imagine. I was gonna say I can imagine, but I can't. You
You
know.
know, the VA has offered me our VA here in Wichita. I've been to multiple VAs across the country. This is one of the best. I do so military sexual trauma. It's abbreviated MST. We have MST groups. It's all men that we do. I do MST art therapy, which is awesome. It's tons of different art projects that we do. And then I'm getting ready to go to a retreat, or not a retreat, a residential for MST out in California, and I'll be out there for like 6 to 8 weeks. And
That's
it's just
awesome.
all about the healing process.
That's really cool, man, that they do
Yeah.
that. Because going out 6 to 8 weeks, that's almost like you're leaving town, and it's like you're being deployed, but for positive reinforcement. You're not going
Yeah.
to protect or kill anything, or having to do missions or whatever the fuck. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's more of a we want to make sure that you're good kind of thing,
Yeah.
and you're living with this because it's something that a high ranking official doing that kind of shit, you're afraid, I'm
Yeah.
sure, to say anything because this guy can actually do anything to hurt you because he's your superior.
I think there's more feelings than just fear. There's embarrassment, shame, especially as a man, because men, we're raised to not feel things and not show our emotions and things like that. We just push under the rug, and I hate that stigma of it. So, I'm a big outreach person when it comes to things like that.
And I'm sure growing up in a house where you're growing up in the 90s and it's before cell phones and shit, and you're an internet where you can
Yeah.
connect with people, and because I'm 38, so I know what it
Okay.
was like
Yeah.
to, yeah.
You
And
know.
your dad being in the military, I'm sure he was, you don't show your feelings, you don't cry, you don't, so that's how you're raised. So now you're not supposed to cry, and you're
Right.
supposed to listen to your subordinates, and or be subordinate. I'm saying that backwards, but listen to your higher ranking people. They're the ones that are going to tell you what to do and follow their rule of thumb. I'm sure he instilled all of that kind of shit in your head of what you need to, did you ever tell your dad what happened?
I did not. He passed 2021. He got pneumonia from COVID, and then his Agent Orange all kicked in, and he passed. But you're right. All that came into play because being little, you look up to your parents, right? And
Yep.
I always thought it was normal that he would go to family dinners and he would just sit there and be quiet and not talk to anybody. I thought that was normal. Really, that's PTSD that he's not talking about, that he's not getting treated. But at the time, I'm like, okay, that's what you do. So now I'm an adult. That's what I'm going to do. Oh, my dad drinks every day. That's what we do when we grow up. We drink.
Yeah. Yep. Where was your dad deployed at?
He was in Vietnam.
Oh shit.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, he was a
Well,
tunnel rat, man. He never talked about things he did, just like I don't talk about things I did. However, the difference there is I talked to the VA about what I've done, to my
yeah.
therapist. I am getting help. He didn't get help from anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Therapy is fucking amazing.
Yeah. Fuck
Um,
yeah, it is.
I recommend it to everybody.
Absolutely.
Whether you're an alcoholic, whether you're an addict, whether you're a regular Joe Schmo, um,
Yeah.
I'm a big advocate for therapy. I have a separate podcast that's called The Unlicensed Therapist, where I interview people about trauma. And in this show, we talk about trauma, but we do a deep dive into trauma. On the other show, we'll touch on addiction, but do a deep dive into trauma. This show, we dive into
Right.
addiction and touch on trauma. So because I was talking to so many people, and you know I could have went for hours if they talked about their trauma,
Yeah.
like we do in the other shows. So I'm not licensed, so that's why I was like, fuck it, it's the unlicensed therapist, and it'll
That's
be,
awesome, man. I love the name of it.
yeah. So that's a good one to do, where we talk about trauma. So I recommend therapy to
Yeah.
everybody. I'm a huge
Absolutely.
advocate for therapy. When I first started my show, BetterHelp was a sponsor of mine.
Oh, wow.
So and then eventually I stopped. My numbers weren't good enough, and then I stopped doing my show for a few months. So I kind of dropped off, and now I don't have any sponsors, and it's kind of my choice that I'm not chasing down a sponsor, because this is my sober hobby. Doing this show keeps me
Yeah.
sober.
Yeah. You got to
Having
have a
these
hobby, man.
conversations with people and learning their stories keeps me sober. I'm not sure if you do any programs like AA or
Yeah.
NA. So in AA, they say a meeting is two alcoholics having a conversation. It
Yep.
only takes two. So, these are my mini meetings. I'll do 4 of these on the weekends.
Yeah.
Or like just today, I'll do 4 today.
Wow.
And I do my Gamblers Anonymous at noon. So I do these meetings all throughout the day, and this shit keeps me sober, keeps me
Yeah.
clean, it keeps me sober.
I
Um,
bet, man. That's awesome. That's so great. And you know what? Not only does it keep you sober, it's helping the people you're interviewing help them stay sober too.
yeah, that's kind of why I started this. I started this July of 2021,
Wow.
and I haven't looked back. I think I've taken months off. Like when I relapsed last year, I took a few months off from releasing new episodes because I kind of felt disingenuous because I was so early in my recovery again.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be like boasting sobriety when I was trying to recover my thoughts again, you
Right.
know, because you know how it is after a relapse. You
Yeah.
have to try to ground yourself again before jumping into anything
Absolutely.
like relationships.
Oh
It's
yeah.
important to
Yeah.
wait a year before
Uh,
you get into a relationship.
Man, I preach that. I preach that. And I keep seeing it happening to my close friends where, they're 90, maybe a little under 6 months, hop into a relationship and everything's great. Then they break up and it's, they're done with the recovery. They're done. And it's horrible, man. You got to focus on you and you have to heal you before you can do anything else.
Yeah, you
Um,
have to learn to love yourself. And
yeah,
the problem is if you're meeting these people in relationships from the rooms from AA or NA, now you're like, well, I'm not going to go to that meeting because she'll be there and I don't want to see her. And then, next thing you know, you're avoiding all these meetings because you don't want to see the person. And for all you know, she's avoiding the meetings too because she's afraid to see you there. Now,
yeah,
both of your recoveries are rocky because you're afraid to run into each other.
right. Exactly.
Now, now when you did you retire like at a younger age? Not retire, but like leave at a younger age.
I did. I got out when I was 22, almost 23. I get VA disability for different reasons, back pain. I get a I get an epidural in my back every 3 months, knee pain, flat feet, um, all the different all the different conditions, PTSD, things like that.
Yeah. And are you working?
I am. Yep, I work at the VA actually.
Oh,
Yep.
cool.
Yeah, that way I can give back to fellow veterans.
Yeah, you might as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. It's rewarding.
Now, so your drinking really progressed when you were like 23 and you got out.
Yeah, I would say, it was going up and up and up, and then when I got out, it got bad. I remember waking up and having to have a whiskey bottle in my hand every morning, and that just continued and continued, and I kept surrounding myself with people who drank the same because I thought it was normal to drink until you black out, so I only hung out with people who blacked out. Um, and that continues all the way up until about 2015, and during that time, um I multiple suicide attempts, hospitalizations, things like that. But then about 2015, no, I'm sorry, 2016, um, I started using cocaine. I got introduced to it at a friend's house. 'Cause I was almost blacked out. They saw it and they were like, "Hey, try this. You won't black out." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I tried cocaine. And then, sorry, I live in Oxford, and my roommate was like, "Oh, I love cocaine." uh, so I tried it and I fell in love because I can drink, 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 and then keep drinking.
Yeah,
I
I
said,
always say cocaine and alcohol to go together like milk and cookies.
they do. It's the forbidden milk and cookies. That's what it
Yep.
is.
Yep. That
Um,
if you're doing coke, you're drinking. There's no ifs and buts about it. If you're doing coke, you have a bottle in your hand too, and you're doing shots. Or my drink of choice was Jack Daniels,
oh yeah,
and I would do it to start off my night. I would do a double shot of Jack with a Jack and Coke that's 2/3 Jack.
yep,
You know what I mean? And
yeah,
I would go through a fifth of Jack and a 2 liter bottle of Coke, and I would drink both of them throughout the night in a big 16-ounce glass,
yeah.
and just sit. I would have a straw because you can drink faster
Oh,
with a
faster.
straw. So I would just mix it up with my straw and just sip on it, and I would refill that thing so many times till the bottle was. I woke up on leap day and I was so hungover, and I said to my wife, like, either I need to start drinking right now or we need to quit, you know.
Yeah,
And they're an alcoholic too, so they're like, yeah, let's do it, let's quit. So I haven't looked back, and COVID shut down everything 2 weeks later, which
yeah,
sucked. So, all right. So it's 2016. You had a couple of suicide attempts, and then you were
yeah.
introduced to cocaine.
Yep. Then I was introduced to cocaine. Oh, did we lose service?
Nope.
No. Okay, we're good. Sorry, it did like a thing.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, 2016, get introduced to cocaine. Later that year, met my daughter's mom. Um, she ends up getting pregnant, and my daughter's born in May 30th, 2017. And that's gonna correct me, man. I have a daughter now. I can stop drinking. I don't have to keep partying. It didn't work. I showed up drunk every night from home, blacked out. I wasn't allowed to be there when my daughter was born. I wasn't allowed in the room. I had to wait until after she was delivered. So I missed that moment because of my alcoholism and my drug addiction. Um, and then my daughter was left that we tried to work things out. It didn't work. I had my daughter full time for a while her mom did her own thing. And then her mom took her back when she was, I want to say, a little over a year. And I didn't see my daughter for a long time. Uh, in 2018, August 2018, I got a DUI. I was driving out of town for some reason. I was blacked out, coked out, and I ran a 2-lane highway stop sign. Somehow didn't hit the semis or get hit, but I went in the ditch. And when I went in the ditch, the car went up about 40 feet, the semi truck driver said. And when I hit the ground, my seatbelt broke and I flew through my windshield, my driver's side windshield, and shattered it. I didn't get a scratch on me, but I got out and I woke up, and I'm laying in this grass and I couldn't move. I'm like, oh, what's happening? I can't feel my arms or my legs, or I'm like, what's going on? I can't even move my head. And next thing you know, there's an EMS guy over me. He's like, can you feel anything? I said, no. He's like, okay, don't move. You're paralyzed. And so panic, kicked in. I'm like, oh my God, I'm paralyzed. What? They got me on a stretcher. They got me in the ambulance. That's when the pain started kicking into high, and the drunk's gone. I'm in pain, um, severe pain. My L2 down to my S1 are fractured, um, and they're giving me shots of Dilaudid,
The
and
lot
it's
of,
not.
I was going to
Yeah,
say, yeah, lot of their fentanyl.
yep, Dilaudid, fentanyl, all of it. None of it's working. It's horrible. I get to the VA hospital. They're doing the CAT scans and the MRIs and stuff on my back. And I remember the trooper. He's like, "Hey, I got to get blood work to make sure you're sober." And I was cussing him out, because I'm still feeling it and all the drugs. And he got his blood work, and I got my DUI, and I did diversions. But I remember 4 days later, I could end up walking again. It was great, and I'm wearing the little
No,
vest they had for me.
yeah.
Um, I wore it for about a week, and then I took it off and just kept on about my day. So that didn't stop me though. I kept going. I kept drinking, using cocaine, ruining every friendship I had. Um, and then so that was August of 2018. In December, on Christmas Eve, I'm at my friend's house I'm living at. He's drunk. I'm hungover and coming off of ecstasy, and I get a headache, and my skin starts turning white. I don't feel good. I tell him. He's like, you're fine. You're making up. I'm like, no, dude, you need to call the cops. I'm getting dizzy, or call 911. Um, and so I laid down and I called 911 and I gave him my address. And then I remember throwing up, um, relieving myself in my pants. And then I woke up in the hospital, and they told me, hey, you just had an aneurysm rupture. We're going to have to do brain surgery. The chaplain's on his way to say prayers and everything. Hopefully you make it through. So they did the brain surgery. I woke up after my coma I was in, because they had messed up. You can see the
I see it.
scar. Yeah, and then it's also dented because they
Yeah.
slipped. But I mean, I'm not mad. He saved my life. I'm okay with a little deformed head. Um,
And that should have been a wake up call, man. But when I woke up and I pulled my catheter out because I didn't know what it was, that was painful. But they're like, "Hey, you're on a Dilaudid drip. You can hit it every 2 minutes." They didn't know I'm an addict, so and my problem's me. So I'm sitting there hitting it every 2 minutes. I did that for 28 hours. They said, and they cut me off. And they said, "Hey, you can't have any more." Um, so I just continue drinking and using, and I'm trying AA and everything. And finally in 2020, no, sorry, 2021, my father died in February of 2021, and it was, I believe, March or April of that year. I finally was like, okay, I'm gonna go to AA. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Whatever. I'm not one of those guys though. I haven't lost everything, but I'll try it. And it stuck. I got a sponsor. I did the steps, and it was great. I really got involved in service work, and I stayed clean all the way up um, until 2022. So no, 2023. So 3 years. I had great recovery. I was doing everything, but then I stopped going to meetings. I started judging people in the meetings. I started looking at all the bad things instead of looking at all the good things. I wasn't grateful.
You stop
Um,
talking to your sponsor, you stop going to meetings, you stop having connection to your higher power. You know,
everything.
those are all the things, I relapsed after my dad died.
Yeah.
And, that was last June. And I went on a run for 9 months with benzos and weed. So I still haven't bought, street drugs in 6.5 years because I'm scared to death of fentanyl.
Yeah.
Um, but when your dad dies, as you know, it's easy to, convince a doctor to give you benzos.
Yep.
So, I convinced him to give me Ativan, and then the Ativan stopped working. I convinced him to give me Valium. Then I started snorting my Valium, and it took my wife to be like, you're not sober. You're missing a lot of pills. And I'm like, shit, I'm not sober. And like, it kind of all hit me like, I got to change and do something.
Yeah.
So I quit smoking weed, and I stopped taking the benzos. I dumped a bunch out. And, I told CVS to stop giving them to me. I'm allergic. And,
That's
because
good.
I was in AA, man, and CVS kept texting me saying your diazepam's ready for pickup. And I'm 3 weeks in, and I'm like, what the fuck? I keep getting these,
Yeah. Oh,
and
shit.
I shared about it, and I was like, I don't think, and now I'm in NA because I felt
Me
like I
too.
need to do it differently.
Yeah.
You're in NA now too?
Yeah, man. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
where oh, sorry.
The book.
So I carry these everywhere with me. I carry my backpack. I have my tattoo supplies. I do tattoos and stuff. But
I
I
yeah, I got some too.
this is my daily load, man.
Yep,
And
yep.
I'm working the NA steps this time, and
It's a lot more
so
intense. It's a lot
yeah,
more intensive and that's why I changed, because I said to them in a meeting, I was like, I don't think, and NA is non-existent where I live. I had to do it through Zoom. And I do it every day at noon, Monday to Friday, and then I do Gamblers Anonymous on the weekends. And I was in AA, and I was like, I don't think you guys can understand or fathom that, like, I can spend $1 right now at CVS and be high for weeks. I can scrounge up change in my car and then be high for weeks.
yeah,
And,
exactly.
you guys can't sit here and tell me you can relate to me right now, because you can't get loaded off $1 for weeks
Right.
with alcohol.
Yeah.
And I know you guys are upset that I'm talking about drugs, but that's my problem right now.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I'm so far away from the drink that when my dad passed, it was the last thing I thought about was drinking,
Yeah.
because I knew in my mind of minds that drinking's not going to fix this, but benzos might, and weed's definitely going to help. So, I stuck with the not drinking, and I went with the using. And yeah, man, it's, I could hide the benzos, but I can't hide the liquor.
Right.
So,
Absolutely. I agree, man. And when got out of jail and I got help and I started the transition living in this Oxford, I went to Unity, which is my home group of Narcotics Anonymous. And when I sat down, I've been there a couple times and people recognized me, and I felt shame and guilt and I'm like, I was embarrassed, you know, and people stopped talking to come hug me. And I forgot what a hug was, man. I forgot what love was.
Yeah,
And
NA is hugging, and NA it's a lot of huggers.
man, and you know, now, you know what I do now, because I suffer from manic, I'm sorry, not manic, major depressive disorder. So what I do now is every meeting I'm at, I stand at the door and I hug everyone.
Yep.
And yeah, it's to help them, but it's to help me because I'm struggling, you know,
Yeah.
daily. But I'll sit there and I hug them and I hug everyone. I ask and I'm like, "Can I give you a hug? Welcome." And I hug them, and it helps. It helps everyone.
Yeah. I used to be a door greeter in AA, and I loved it. I would be outside the door smoking my cigarette, and and hey, how you doing? Welcome. Thanks for coming out. Like, and just
Yeah,
like, and AA is not a hugging group. You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
more of a pound or a shake of the hand.
yeah, yeah.
And because I was always out there smoking anyway, so I'm not going to give somebody a hug while I'm smoking
Right.
unless they're smoking too. But I said hi to like 50 people at each meeting because I
Oh
got
yeah,
sober in Los Angeles. So I was at meeting rooms where it was 50 plus people to a meeting.
yeah. Wow.
You know what I mean? Like big groups, and I fucking loved it. And
Yeah,
I heard real raw shares. You
yeah.
know, going to a 7 o'clock meeting was kind of it was kind of a shitty meeting in my area of LA where I lived because it was filled with people in rehab where you had to go.
Oh
Like
yeah.
the rehab would show up in a minivan, or
Yep.
we called it a Dauphine limousine, and
Yeah.
you and 16 people come piling out and into the meeting. And there wasn't a lot of recovery in those meetings because everyone was sitting in sober living or sitting in, inpatient
Yeah.
treatment. And this is their gift to leave the inpatient is to go to an outside meeting. And but when I got into sober living, my sponsor was like, try to come to late night. And I was like, what's late night? He was like, there's an 11 p.m. meeting 7 days a week in late, and we call it late night. Try to get your curfew extended. I'll give you rides home and I'll give you rides there, but see if they'll let you break curfew. And I did. And my people were like at the rehab were like, yeah, that's fine. Get a slip that you were there, and you can go to that late night meeting. And it was fucking amazing because that's a meeting where no rehabs were,
Yeah.
and everybody in there was suffering or had amazing recovery, and
Yeah.
it was real and it was raw. And I took something from every single meeting. I cried.
Yeah.
I would come home though and feel fulfilled. My day, no matter
Yeah.
how bad my day was, it reset everything going to that.
Absolutely. That's crazy you say that, because here in Wichita at my home group Unity, we have the 12 o'clock meeting every single day, and it's big, it's packed. Um, Treatment usually doesn't come to that one. At 7 p.m. though, it's another packed meeting. That's where treatment comes.
Yep.
So it's the same thing. And then we have a late night meeting. It's at 9 p.m. And that meeting is the most heartfelt, emotional, moving meeting I've ever been to. The daytime meetings to me are really, really, really strong recovery. You got people in there with 38, 40 years. But then at 9 p.m., that's where you got the people with, 3 months to, or I'm sorry, a day and no days to a year or two. And it's intense, and it's moving for
Yeah.
sure.
Yep. Those are some of the best meetings to go
Yeah,
to. Are those meetings where people have under 5 years?
absolutely.
You
I
know,
agree.
the person with the most time has like 5 years, and everything is still raw.
Yeah.
And people, when they're in there, because it's a lot different to go to a meeting where rehabs are bringing people in because those people have to be there. You know what I
Yep.
mean? But you go
Yeah,
to
they don't usually want to share, or
yeah.
they don't have much to share because they're so brand new and they just got taken off the streets, or whatever, and they're still molding. You're still molding them.
And then the 9 o'clock, what you're talking about, or midnight, when the one I would go to, it's people that were there because they wanted to be there.
Yep,
They
exactly.
didn't have to be there. They wanted to be there.
Yep.
So, their shares were a lot better and you took a lot from it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because like you're saying, it's more of recovery based and not have to be there based.
Right. Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad that you're doing a lot better this time around. Are you?
Man, I'll tell you this time I there's so many aspects that go into my recovery. One's my higher power. I'm very involved in my church. I just got baptized in September 29th, and then I became a, we call it kingdom team, but volunteer for the church. And now I got asked to be a leader in the church, and I'm like, what? Okay, that's amazing because it's what I love to do. Is to help people, and that's what my church does. I'm doing that. I work with my sponsor. We meet weekly at the same time every week. We spend an hour to 2 hours doing step work and just being real and raw with each other. Another cool thing my sponsor does is I was his first sponsee, right? He only has 2 years clean, or he has 2 years clean, and I was his first sponsee, and then he got two more, and so he has monthly meetups for all of us, and he's like, dude,
Your
we're a family.
Spunky brothers.
Yeah, we're sponsee brothers. And he's like, dude, we're a family. So every month we're gonna meet up. We're gonna meet up and do things. And that's a huge part of it too. Another
My
big
wife
part for
does.
me.
Yeah, my wife does that. She does recovery dharma.
Oh
Um,
yeah, we have that at the Phoenix.
oh, do you? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what we she does it online, but she also hosts a meeting in person locally.
that's cool.
Um, but they have inquiries instead of doing the steps. You do something called inquiries where you're answering these questions,
Yep.
and she has a what the hell is it called? A wise friend or something like that. I
Yeah,
forget what
yeah,
they're
something like
called
that.
instead of a sponsor. But they do inquiry groups once a week. So
Yeah,
like every Tuesday at like noon, there'll be like five of them with their mentor and going over inquiries together. So
that's
it
cool.
it sounds similar to what you're talking about with your, we call them sponsee brothers,
Right.
where or there's some people have grand sponsors where your
I got a
sponsor
grant sponsor.
your
Yeah,
your
and that's
sponsor.
that's one thing that my sponsor suggested was, hey, my sponsor my grand sponsor has a meeting. We all go to it to support him. And then his sponsor has a meeting, and it just keeps going. But I think something that you touched on and you didn't really mention was recovery is different for everyone. And I'm a type of person, I don't care what you do to stay clean and sober, bro, I'm happy for you, you
Yeah,
know? And I don't judge. Like, you do AA, cool. NA, cool. Dharma, cool. You just stay clean and you surround yourself by good people, cool. That whatever works for you.
you're the average of the five people you spend the most time with.
That's right. Absolutely.
You
That's
know what I
that's
mean?
good. I haven't heard that. That's
Yeah,
good.
and it's the truth, man. It's you know, my wife has got 4.5 years sober. I got my 7 months because of restarting my date. I
Right.
still hold on and celebrate on 2/29 and being alcohol free, but it's not a date I
Yeah.
get a tip for or anything like that.
Yeah.
And my wife has MS,
Okay.
so they have a care worker that's here 4 days a week that helps her with shit around the house. And it's one of our best friends who is also in recovery.
Wow.
So, and they also quit. She quit smoking weed too. So we're like a completely sober apartment, 4 days a week with people here. And
That's
it's funny.
awesome.
It's funny the shit that you notice a difference when you quit smoking weed
Yeah.
because we rent an apartment in an apartment complex, and there was a light that went out, and the fixture we couldn't get off the ceiling, so we had to call maintenance. And usually, when you call maintenance and you're a pothead, you have to like hide all your
Yeah.
paraphernalia, your bongs and bowls. You got to make sure it doesn't smell like weed in here,
Right.
all that kind of stuff. And this time around, we called for maintenance. We were like, "Oh shit, we don't have to like hide anything anymore."
Yeah, I feel that way. So being an alcoholic, man, I drove drunk. Like, I don't know. I didn't care about getting behind the wheel. I'm surprised I only had one DUI. I should have had maybe 2,000 plus. But um when I'm driving now and I see a cop, I don't get nervous. Well, for a little bit, and then I'm like, wait, no, I'm licensed, I'm insured, I have my
Yeah,
registration, I'm sober. This is great.
I feel the same way about my pills with
Yeah.
my opiate addiction. For the last 2 years of my addiction, I would drive 2 hours each way, 4 times a week, sometimes
Dang.
5 times a week to get my pills. And I would be withdrawing the entire drive there
Yeah.
and throwing up into a barf bag the entire time while I'm on the highway. I would pick up like 20 pills at a time, spend like $500 and pick up like 20 pills at a time. And immediately I would drop four. My whole thing was I would have full size straws from like McDonald's. I would go in and grab them by the handful,
Yeah.
and I had full size straws and I would bend them in half and I would drop the pills inside the straw and then bite on them inside to break them up and then extend the straw out and go like that. And all
Wow.
four would be right into my. And then I was amazing driving home. Those 2 hours were like, I was nice and high. I,
Right.
I can drive safer now because I felt like as I'm withdrawing, throwing up, it's not safe driving.
Yeah.
It's not safe at all. And I actually quit benzos because of one of those car rides. I had taken 2 Xanax because I was withdrawing, and I was like, okay, I'm going to drive now. And I would take the PA Turnpike, and then I would hop on what's called the Schuylkill, which you're on for another half hour to go through Philadelphia to go to Jersey, where I'm from. And it was 60 miles on the PA Turnpike. I always knew exactly. I would watch the mile markers, right, to know
Yeah.
when my exit was coming up. And I remember looking at the mile marker, being like, okay, I'm 30 miles away from my exit. And then I came to a second later, and I was 30 miles past my exit. I drove for 60 miles, completely blacked out, going
Wow.
90 miles per hour. I drove an old cop car. So, like, I was going 90 miles per hour in my Crown Vic.
Yep.
And I was like, holy shit. And I saw I was
Right.
going 90. I'm like, where the fuck am I? And then I saw the mile marker, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm never touching a benzo again. And
Dang.
I didn't touch a benzo until my dad passed. I went, I don't know, 7 years
Yeah.
without benzo. And because that scared the shit out of me that I blacked out on the highway like that. It
Right.
didn't
And
stop me. It didn't stop me. I still went and bought like perks.
I'm
Yeah.
glad you mentioned that because that's like talking about a bottom, right? And I kept digging more bottoms. You know, my first bottom was suicide attempts, and then hospitalizations, and losing my daughter. Um, and then my last bottom was losing. I lost custody of my daughter when I went to jail, going to jail, and then facing prison. Um, that was my new bottom. I didn't think I could keep digging, but I did. And be homeless and have nothing.
So
Um,
I'm gonna tell you something that I say all the time. We all have different low points, and you just described a bunch of low points, but I feel like our bottoms are all the same.
yeah,
And your bottom is when you decide to surrender to a program and start
that's
working
good.
the program.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. I like that a lot. That's awesome. Yeah, I
So
had a
we all
lot of
have
low
different
points.
Yeah, we all had different low points, and we all look different in our low points, whether you're losing a child, whether it's you're going to jail, whether it's, DUI, whatever it is. They're all lows that we have. Going homeless. These are all low points that we have,
Yeah,
and they're all different. But you can be sober, white knuckling it, and not. You're still not so. You're not doing the work yet, and you haven't
right,
surrendered yet. You
right.
haven't
Yeah,
hit your
absolutely.
bottom to where you're like, I need to change something in my life, because that's when you start coming back up out of that bottom.
Right, absolutely. I lost so I dropped my daughter off on June 9th, and I had shared custody. I had every Wednesday to Saturday, and she wasn't letting me see her, so I filed contempt of court paperwork. The judge said, "Hey, meet at the police station." She never did, and that was another part of that relapse. When I was arrested, she filed for temporary sole custody. Since she wrote a character statement about me for my criminal case, she's a witness now, so I can't contact. And you know what? I'm okay with it. I had to accept it. Something I do to help me with that, though, is every night I write my daughter a letter in my journal and I draw her some pictures. Because I'm like, you know what? However long it's going to be, she'll have all these things to read about how my day was and how much I miss her and everything else. And it
That's
helps
really
me,
cool.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like journaling.
Yeah, it is. It is journaling because I tell her how my day was, what I did wrong, but and how I could have how I can fix it next time, and it's almost like I'm writing down a 10th step.
I was That's exactly what I was thinking. Is you're doing a 10-step every night?
Doing a 10-step every night for my daughter. Yep.
Yeah,
Or
that's
to
awesome.
my daughter. To my daughter.
Yeah, too. And
Yeah.
she's 8 now.
She's 7. She'll be 8 in May.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
When was this time you got to see her?
June 9th.
June 9th. Okay.
Yep.
Is
Yep.
there a time to where you have to do a certain thing in order to see her again?
No, so I have a custody attorney.
He's amazing. As soon as my criminal stuff is, as soon as I get sentenced to whatever it may be, he is filing for supervised visits. And the Oxford house I'm in is a men and children's house. So she can come over here for the supervised visits. So I'll have supervised visits as soon as my criminal stuff is done. They're just working on a plea deal right now. And so it's a waiting game with the DA.
Yeah. Well,
Yep.
that's good that you're on your feet and you're doing all the
Yeah.
right things.
Yeah, and I've got, man, I have that was my biggest thing.
Like I said, when I got out of inpatient, I didn't have support, right? I am surrounded by support. Church, Oxford, unit, my NA group. I mean, when I went to my arraignment, I had NA members show up that I didn't know were coming. My pastor showed up. I didn't know he was coming. And it was only arraignment. I've received probably 35, 40 character statement letters, because I also run a nonprofit. My nonprofit is called Hope in a Bag. And what I do is I make hygiene baggies for male and female, and then food baggies, and I hand them out on Saturdays to the homeless.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that helps, man. And so I'm trying to show not only the judge but myself that I can better society by staying clean.
Yeah. That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to hear all that.
Yeah,
You're
man.
doing all the right. I wish I would have been doing all that at 33. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So keep up what you're doing because it's obviously working.
Yeah. Yeah. The biggest thing I think is, I mean, there's a lot of things,
But it's being authentic. You have to be honest with yourself. You have to. You can't lie anymore because I was a pathological liar in my addiction. Um, so that open-mindedness, I have to be open-minded to everything. I can't, oh, you did that way. I don't know. I'm not, no, I'm okay. Maybe that'll work for me too. Let me try it. And then willingness. I have to be willing to work with my sponsor, to listen to suggestions from other people. Um, especially in Oxford, they do this thing, constructive criticism. And I'm brand new. I've been here maybe a month, because I was in sober living before this, but um, I have to learn to take that constructive criticism, and I can't take it personally. It's not personally. They're just trying to help me become better.
Do you have any contact with your mom?
I do. I talk to my mom.
Almost daily. I go see her now because I have a car again. I go see her every weekend. I try to see her every weekend. Let me take that back. Depends on how busy I am, but I do talk to
That's
her
cool.
almost every day. Yeah, my
Yeah,
mom.
yeah.
Yeah, my mom is my best friend, man.
Yeah, my mom lives 2.5 hours away, so I don't see her as often as I used to.
Yeah,
But
mine's about an hour away.
I call her almost daily. I just got the phone with her before we hopped on here.
Yeah.
And I'm used to calling my dad every day.
Yep.
So every time I think to call my dad, I call my mom instead.
Yeah,
And
that's good.
I just called her. I just did an interview with somebody. By this time it's going to be out, so I don't mind spoiling it. She was 6 years old when her mom started giving her sangria, or Kahlua, rather Kahlua.
Wow.
And I said to my mom, "Do you want to feel like you did a valid reason of why you were a good mom?" And I was like, "What age do you think when the mom started giving the daughter Kahlua?" She's like, "I don't know, 15." I was like, "Nope, 6." She's like, "Oh my God, I can't even fathom." And I was like, "There's your validation that you're a good mom, even though I'm a drug addict
Yeah.
and doing all these things." You did.
My mom, man, my mom never once
Enabled me. She would never enable me ever, but she always supported me. She's like, "I love you no matter what you do," and she's always been there. And I love my mom to death.
That's awesome. You had that relationship with her.
yeah.
So, well, thanks again, bro. I really appreciate you coming on and talking and telling your story.
Man, thank you.
I was, like I said, I've been having a rough past couple days with depression, and I needed this. It helped. Thank you, man.
Cool, man. My pleasure. Have a great night.
You too.